the dominion of India was constituting of two sets of things. One was polity A states, which constituted the provinces which were under direct control of the government of India, and the princely states which were almost had a degree of autonomy among themselves in respect of administration is concerned, and that it was in respect of these larger issues like foreign affairs, defence and communication that they came under within the ambit of the government of India. Hari Singh's position was important because under the Government of India Act he was supposed to sign this instrument of accession. There was no occupying of the land. It was not taking over. It was not accession, was not acquisition. There is lots of difference between accession and acquisition. The whole argument that is being placed people was that Sardar Patel acquired lands. No, there is no acquisition. There was accession. Sheikh Abdullah by then was already a big leader in Kashmir. He was the president of the National Conference by late 30s, and Nehru had a regular interaction. Congress party had an interaction because he was in charge of these processes. In fact, very interesting aspect is that when the Pashtun marauders came against in Kashmir, when Maharaja had no option but to take support of the Indian military, there was this construct. He said that he could not stay anymore there. He was feeling extremely threatened. So he moved from Srinagar to Jammu, from Jammu thereafter out of Kashmir altogether. Not only him, even his Prime Minister, MC Mahajan, Maharchand Mahajan, he also moved out of Kashmir. So what happened was, at the time of this particular accession also, they said that let there be some government formed in Kashmir under the leadership of Sheikh Abdullah. Maharaj himself told the Indian government that an interim government be formed under the leadership of Sheikh Abdullah. By that time, when the interim government was formed, India was talking to the interim government of Kashmir. After accession, they were not talking to Hari Singh, they were talking to interim government of Kashmir. And Sheikh Abdullah was heading the interim government. The government was formed in Kashmir. They were supposed to conduct the kind of processes through which the people's opinion would be secured. This is something which was happening in Kashmir. Now, what we have is that all these statutes which were discussed, whether it is 35A or Article 370, were part of this whole large process that happened from between 1947 to 1952. This is something which you should keep it in mind. And these were trying to keep the rights of the Kashmiri people protected. Kashmiriyat is not just Islam. It has its own, every aspect of society, a culture that it to have. Kashmir has its own independent identity. It has its own identity. It was very valued kind of thing. Therefore, the requirement of a self-rule was in respect of this identity, a larger identity, and not something which was sectarian. When I say Kashmiri, it is not Muslim. Kashmiri means the Hindus from Jammu, Dogras, Muslims, Ladakhis and Baltistani, all. So when we talk in terms of that, these rights existed to all and it was protected. While all the political discussions regarding accession was done, at no point of time there was any discussion regarding questioning the validity of these rights of the people. They had become sacrosanct. When talking in terms of Kashmir, yes, it had a special place in Nehru's mind always. He was from the valley himself. He had his roots from the valley. He was a Pandit from the valley. He felt that it was necessary for Kashmir for two reasons. One, of its own existence, it was much different from the construct of Muslim League and the Pakistan you are talking in terms of, way different from what it was. Two, it was also strategic, according to Nehru, with the given China as a border, the Soviet Union as a border, and Afghanistan as a border.
तो आप देख लीजिए, हमने फैसला किया तो जितनी चीज थी उस चीज में उदारता से हमने उनको जितना इनका हिस्सा था उससे ज्यादा भी देने के लिए हमने कोशिश की। लेकिन जब हमने उनका रुपया देने का किया, उस समय पर हमने कहा कि आपको यदि 1,600 करोड़ रुपया चाहिए और इतना हिस्सा हमारा चाहिए तो हम देने के लिए आपका हक हो न हो, ज्यादा हम देने के लिए भी तैयार है। लेकिन मैंने लिख के दिया था।
A small committee was formed headed by Nehru, Sardar Patel and Iyengar and few others. Sheikh Abdullah was part of the whole process. It was nothing called independent that Nehru had a say or Patel had a say or the X was forced to a thing. No, that was not the case. I think historically one should go back and read this. This is being presented as though to demonstrate that Patel was made weak. I don't think that's an argument. That it's already, if you look at the papers that are existing, the kind of the records that are existing in the Indian polity, it would clearly go to show that it was a process of negotiation. It was a negotiation that started in 1947 till 1952. 5 long years negotiation continued with Kashmir. Keep that in mind. In fact, it was not one day or one off things. It was a discussion that took 5 years to evolve. And it was after 5 years evolution had taken place, therefore the presidential orders. What was presidential order was actually the Indian concurrence to the existing thing. There is lots of difference in it. It was not that India made a law for Kashmir. It was Indian concurrence to what was already in existence. The first meeting that happened regarding this issue happened in the Patel's residence. And it was there they prepared a letter, and it was after his approval that the matter was sent to Sheikh Abdullah, who insisted that he did not want fundamental rights or directive principles of the state policy being applicable. It should be also with the concurrence of the state legislature. That was his constituent assembly. That was unacceptable at a particular point of time. There have been some amount of hard negotiations that took place. It's not that there was no hard negotiations. But to state that it was Nehru who did all the things is wrong. Maybe that one of the reasons which is that at that point of time, internationally, Nehru was the most visible leader. That's also a fact which happened because of the work which was happening. He was taking India to places. He was demonstrating the presence of Indian politics in every place. That was something which extraordinary amount of work was being done. And rest of the work was done here in India by Patel and the entire team. And there was nothing called not there being a concern. This is being now new stories which are being floated by these people. There is a process of trying to appropriate Patel as that he was a Hindutva kind of a thing. He was not. He was a thoroughbred congressman. He was an amazing congressman. See, there is something called trying to legitimize their misconceptions. There are certain misconceptions, the fallacies they want to create, and to legitimate these fallacies, yes, this kind of arguments are being put forward. And today, the undoing of the Nehruvian legacy is something which is a necessity. It's one of the major challenges the present dispensation is trying to look at. Undoing that is very important. So they come with very small incidents that try to blow it out of proportion and try to say this is the challenge. Now these arguments are now getting credence by being put across on various platforms and statements. It's like it's predominantly a Goebbels story. And when I see this, I don't see any difference from how it is done, Goebbels story. Trying to put forward a statement and keep propagating it over a period of time, circulate it such a period of time, so that it gets credence. Now the Article 370 is always contains transitory provision. It's only for a particular period. What's this particular period? Very interesting thing is that when we say it's a particular period, a specifically particular period, what was that period we're talking in terms of? The period was that to enable the Constituent Assembly, enable the Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir to come with the Constitution. There was this Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir that was supposed to come up with its own constitution. Under the Government of India Act and the thing, each state had the right to form its own constitution. Kashmir formed a Constituent Assembly and it debated. So the Article 370 we talk in terms of was to culminate in formation of the provisions under the Constituent Assembly culminating in Constitution of Jammu and Kashmir. Now when this process was initiated, so this transitory provision would end in this, merge into this construct. Once, if Constituent Assembly makes a statement, these are going to be the things. If it were to be in tune with Article 370 and in tune with Article 33, they become sacrosanct. So when you say that by 1952 this came into existence, there was no parliamentary discussion, sorry. This is already discussed earlier. It is already discussed earlier, which is already in existence earlier. Article 370 that we have was 306A under the Constituent Assembly. In consonance with what was discussed in the Constituent Assembly, in consonance with, in tune with what was the Government of India Act at 1946, so these provisions were to be made. So what was these provisions? That the rights and responsibilities the people which existed, which the people had, would be protected. That was something which was very sacrosanct. So therefore the whole discussion that happened between 1947 to 1952 with Sheikh Abdullah resulted in formulation of Article 370. So when you talk in terms of these things, we also need to talk in terms of Gorkhaland. What is the Assam Bodoland struggle? You look at any of these factors, you would see one thing common is that the question of identity of the people which is being issued. So therefore they want that separate space, protect their identity, ensure their culture is protected, ensure that their rights are protected, their land rights, their voting rights, their representation is protected. They are in small numbers. What is this permanent resident status? It's predominantly to ensure the protection of their identity. The whole argument of this group is that let's populate Kashmir with Hindus. Let's populate the Ladakh. Let's populate these places. It's not only that you have 35A. 35 is applicable in Jammu, Kashmir, Ladakh, what are the place you're talking in terms of. Same law applies. You can't buy a property in Jammu the same way you can't buy a property in Ladakh. It's protected. That's something which is very important for us. it exists in Himachal Pradesh. You can't buy a property in Himachal Pradesh. You can't buy property. Even Telangana, tribal areas, it's not. You can't buy properties. So you look at many of Mizoram, many of the states have this kind of laws. Not only that you have the restriction regarding the land is concerned, we also have restriction regarding movement is concerned. In that Kashmir you can go happily. You can't go to Arunachal Pradesh, you need to have inner line permit. You can't go to Andaman Nicobar, you need to have permit. You can't go to Nagaland, you need to have inner line permit. Ages, we have not changed that process. So when such is the case, how are you arguing this? 2. When people are arguing against the, for example, you have to go to Assam, the government of Assam, the present government of Assam saying that these are outsiders, these people are not insiders, we don't want to give them rights. How can you have 2 different opinions? You practice something elsewhere in your interest and you want to practice something else in another place. Why? Now, when it comes down to protection, if you go and ask Dogra community in Kashmir, they are opposed to any dilution of 35A. You go to Ladakhi, they are opposed to dilution of 35A because it protects them. It is not only Muslim. Government employment, yes, it protects them. Yes, there are issues. Those things can be resolved. For example, women's rights is concerned. The Jammu and Kashmir High Court has passed an order. It's the judicial process which has taken place that women have a right. Women should not lose her permanent status, even if she marries outside the non-resident. If she marries a non-permanent resident, she will not lose her status, which was earlier the case. The constitution, Jammu and Kashmir constitution, the kind of thing which is law is existing, they get it. In fact, as such, we have issues in resolving this Kashmir problem, wherein the issues regarding how are we going to protect the borders, wherein the issues regarding large military presence in the thing, actually adding fuel to the fire. If you want to do something to 35A and Article 370, which is sacrosanct. The whole argument before the Supreme Court, which is being presented against 35A or Article 370, I think it's absolutely wholly misplaced. It's high time that we talk about this, it's high time that we share with people, it's high time that these kind of fallacies that are being spread to be stopped. There is a need, it's a crying need that we reach out to people, say that these are the facts which are, these are all available on record. You cannot talk through the hat.